What if I told you your greatest weakness could actually be your greatest strength? It sounds completely backward, right? Well, it's a fascinating and pretty powerful idea, and it's right at the heart of a text we're breaking down today in this explainer. We're going to explore how that feeling of weakness, instead of being a sign of failure, can become a source of some incredible power. You know the feeling. We all do. Whether it's feeling physically drained, just mentally exhausted, or kinda spiritually stuck in a rut. That sense of powerlessness is something everybody goes through. And the source we're looking at today actually uses that exact feeling as the starting point for a really powerful argument. So here's the core question. How does this text analyze weakness? It argues that the critical thing isn't the weakness itself, but how we respond to it. You know, who or what we lean on when we feel that way. The real question is whether that moment becomes a dead end or a major turning point. And to build its case, the text dives into 4 very specific case studies from ancient scripture. We're talking about stories from 1 Samuel chapter 4, Jeremiah chapter 43, Romans chapter 4, and Psalm 18. Each one of them, you'll see, reveals a totally different side of this paradox of weakness. Okay, let's dive right into this. The first half of the argument explores what happens when weakness leads to total failure. And according to our source, this happens when we're disconnected from the real source of our strength. So the first case study is from 1 Samuel 4. Picture this. The Israelites are at war and they are losing badly. So they bring out the Ark of the Covenant, this incredibly sacred object that symbolizes God's presence. They thought its physical presence, just having it there, would act like a magic charm and guarantee them a win. But they were relying on the symbol, not on the actual substance of their faith. And the result? It was a disaster, a devastating defeat, and the Ark itself was captured by their enemy.
And the consequence of this massive mistake is captured in one of the most devastating lines you can imagine, spoken when the news of the defeat arrives. Glory has departed from Israel. I mean, wow. By treating a symbol as their source of power while their hearts were totally disconnected, they didn't gain any strength. They lost everything. The source text frames this as a fatal kind of weakness.
Okay, so the second example of weakness gone wrong comes from Jeremiah 43. Here, the remaining people of Judah get a crystal clear divine command. Do not go to Egypt. Simple enough, right? But they were terrified. They looked at their situation, they did their own human math, and they decided that, well, Egypt seemed like the safer, more logical bet. Their fear completely overrode their faith, and it led them to directly disobey. This, the text argues, is the other path to weakness, when we choose our own anxious logic over a clear instruction. All right, so after 2 stories of absolute failure, the argument takes this fascinating turn. We now shift from stories of what not to do to 2 really powerful examples where admitting weakness becomes the very foundation for finding true, genuine strength.
Let's look at the story of Abraham as it's told in Romans 4. On one hand, you have the cold, hard facts of his human reality. He's 100 years old, and the text says his body was, quote, as good as dead. It's impossible. But on the other hand, he has this divine promise that he will become the father of many nations. The conflict between these 2 things could not be more extreme.
And this is the crucial point. Abraham looked the facts of his weakness right in the eye. He didn't deny them, but instead of letting them crush him, he held on to the promise. The text says his faith didn't weaken. Actually, it grew stronger in the face of this impossibility. And this is our first example of the big paradigm shift, finding strength not by denying weakness, but by trusting a promise despite it.
The second model for success comes from King David in Psalm 18. This is his triumphant declaration after being saved from all his enemies. Now, the source text highlights that this declaration of love isn't just about an emotion. In this context, to love the Lord is to express total trust, total dependence, and total reliance.
And this is so key. David was a king. I mean, he was a powerful, successful warrior in his own right. But the source points out that he didn't credit his victories to his own strength. No, instead, he declared that his strength came from God. His power came from acknowledging his ultimate reliance on a higher power, finding that strength through his human limitations, not in spite of.
So we have 2 failures and 2 successes. How do we put it all together? Well, the source text distills these 4 stories down into a single, really powerful framework for how we should think about and deal with weakness.
So this gives us a really clear framework for action. From the Israelites and the Ark, we learn, seek a genuine connection, not just empty symbols. From the people in Jeremiah's time, obey that divine voice over our own fearful calculations. From Abraham, we see the power of holding on to faith, even when all the odds are against you. And from David, we learn to actively love and rely on our true source of strength.
So it all comes down to this one central idea, what our source calls the paradox of weakness. See, true lasting strength isn't found by pretending we're strong or by relying on our own smarts or by grabbing onto symbols. No, it's found when we have the courage to first admit our weakness, because only then can we actually connect to a source of strength that's way bigger than ourselves.
And that leaves us with a final thought to mull over. According to the logic of this text, the very thing you see as your greatest weakness, the thing that makes you feel stuck or powerless, that might just be the doorway to discovering a strength you never even knew you had. What would change if you started to see it not as a liability, but as an opportunity?